Welcome into the Locked On Knicks podcast for the second time today. I'm joined by Dan Devine, this time to continue talking Mikal Bridges, react to the breaking news that Isaiah Hartenstein is heading to the Oklahoma City Thunder, and what role Julius Randle plays in making the Knicks a genuine title threat.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. I want to remind you that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And I wanted to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, though. Hopefully this episode is your second listen. But if you want to become an everydayer, be sure to hit that notification bell and that subscription button on YouTube to ensure you never miss an episode. On days like today, where we have Hall of Fame guests like Dan Devine, and we decided to turn it into a two-parter after he was generous enough to give us almost an hour of his time. And be sure to hit that auto download function on your favorite podcast platform of choice to ensure you never miss an episode. Guys, I won't delay it any further. Let's get into it right now with Dan. Can Bridges be that bona fide two, maybe just for a game or so, like one against one of the best teams in the NBA?
It's a great question. I mean, I think you feel a little more confident in the likelihood that he could be that supplementary scorer and shot creator now than you would have when he was in Phoenix, just because you hadn't really seen him do that very much. There was a little bit of that toward sort of the end of his stretch there, where his pick and roll volume had gone up and he was starting to create more of his own shots and less of it was assisted. But still, that was, I mean, his bread was buttered by like Chris Paul running the high pick and roll, getting into the lane, Devin Booker, you know, him spotting up on the other side of a Devin Booker isolation, that kind of thing. So I think in terms of the efficiency jumping back up, yeah, if you are going to redistribute his touches away from you with a live dribble at the top of the floor with like no one else that the defense cares about, and you are dealing with their number one defender all the time, and moving a little bit more toward you are in the opposite corner from OG Anunoby or in the slot, while Jalen Brunson is working a two-man game with either Julius Randle or Mitchell Robinson, and you've got somebody else spaced in the corner or the dunker, like he's going to get a higher quality of looks against an already bent defense and be able to create more most of the time. And then, you know, a little bit more opportunity to cook. Like we saw that with OG last year a few times or for a little while, where Brunson went off the floor and it's like, all right, OG's going to run some pick and roll and try to get it to some mid-range pull-ups. Like, I think you feel more confident about those going in when it's Mikal Bridges taking them and like redistributing some of the offense that way. So in terms of that stuff, I feel pretty confident that, I mean, there's a general rule kind of quote unquote of like the usage efficiency curve. And it's like, as usage goes up, efficiency goes down. As usage goes down, efficiency goes up. It's not always the way, and the superstar players are the ones who, as the usage goes up, the efficiency either stays level or goes up with it. See Jalen Brunson. But generally speaking, that's how it works for most guys. And another great example of this in the recent past was Aaron Gordon when he got to Denver. It's like you go from being an overtaxed number 1A or number 2 on a team that doesn't have many other ways to create shots to all of a sudden somebody else is demanding so much defensive attention that all you got to do is spot up or cut or lurk and be ready with your hands up, and you're going to walk into 18 points without having to do anything. I'm not saying it's going to be exactly that easy for Bridges, but I expect something moving in that direction in terms of usage versus efficiency. And then the flip side of that is on the defensive end, if you are being asked to create less, then you're going to have more, fresher legs, more available opportunity, more energy to be able to work on the defensive end, as opposed to if you're having to handle the ball, run 30 pick and rolls, get 80 touches a game, you're going to be able to rebalance and redistribute your energy. So whether he's able to be that like second place finisher and defensive player of the year voting or not, that remains to be seen. But I think there's a reason. It's reasonable to harbor hope that he is going to be able to tick up back on that end. But before we move any further, I think we've got to acknowledge something.
I was going to say.
You're the host of the show, so host it.
Isaiah Hartenstein. Man, I'm gonna vomit on camera. This is tough. 4 years, $87 million to the Oklahoma City Thunder. They beat the max offer the Knicks could have gave for $15 million. I was wondering if his desire to just live in New York would trump that. It fairly did not. And this is kind of a double hit for the Knicks in the sense that not only do you lose Hartenstein, but with him going to the Thunder instead of the Magic, like reasonable minds could, like I was going to ask you something like, all right, are the best 3 teams in the NBA in the East now? Like the Thunder certainly belong in that tier, certainly belong in that conversation. That is a scary, scary team. And Dad, how did the Knicks respond to this? And I guess circling back to my premise of that small ball lineup, like could they lean a little bit more into that? And I think the key to that is like, do you think OG Anunoby, who we've seen be a great help side rim protector, like does he have it in him to play like a prime Draymond Green role as like an undersized, ultra long arm, ultra thick, like rim protector, and saying, you know, you want to challenge that dude, go ahead. Because to me, that is kind of the clear cut path forward for the Knicks. As much as I love Mitchell Robinson, I think with the spacing trade-off of Bridges to DiVincenzo and having Randle back, who gets last year the bulk of his offense right at the rim, I just don't see the Knicks closing season-defining games that way. But maybe they will, because that's sort of where Tom Thibodeau's comfortable.
Yeah, I think I mean, obviously, first off, like, congratulations to Isaiah Hartenstein. Like, that is,
I should say that's amazing.
It is a life-changing contract and super richly deserved. Like, he was, Knicks fans know all too well how valuable a player he is and how much he sort of, when given the opportunity to step into a larger role, and when more was asked of him, more was delivered, right? So, like, shouts out to him for getting his paper up. I can't, you can only blame him so much. I think it winds up being 3-87 versus 4-72. Like, it's,
it's 3. Okay,
yeah.
I misread that. Yeah, okay.
So
no argument.
There's no way, there's just no way to go around it. For as far as what, where the Knicks go from here, yeah, I mean, you are going to be shopping in a different aisle in the store at this point. If the list of available free agent big men on the market now looks like Rashawn Holmes and James Wiseman and Mo Wagner, potentially, Daniel Tice, like it's not the same, caliber of name, right? And that is a frustration, and certainly something that they're going to have to, the Knicks front office is going to have to work around. My guess would be, just based on who Tom Thibodeau has been as a coach over time and the rosters that Leon Rose and company have built for him, they are not going to just say it's Mitchell Robinson and then you got to play small. I mean, maybe that means Jericho Sims comes back and you are, hoping for more development out of him, while also having the OG at the 5, or like the ability to potentially play OG and Randle together might be something that would make Thibodeau more comfortable. Then obviously he was never comfortable playing Julius with Obi Toppin at the 5, or other versions of that where it's like you didn't have that real ace defensive player and you're just sort of hoping for, and you were giving up more on the glass and you were hoping for the best with that. I would love to see more of, we didn't really get to see very much of Randle and OG together in those without a center, just because they didn't play together all that much. So I think that would be an interesting thing to look at. It makes Randle's position in the team even more fascinating. My feeling on that was always going to be, the goal was not going to be unless you had something that was, I don't know, an absolute home run swing that, in the same way of like, this is going to dramatically improve the roster as it exists right now, and it costs Randle to do it. I didn't think that they were going to try to move off of him this offseason. I think the idea was, let's see what it looks like when we put that guy who was such an important shot creator for us, especially when Jalen was on the bench. Let's put that guy back into this mix and see what it looks like with this new piece added into it, and Bridges in this new rotation. Let's see. Tibbs has it's basically every year since he's been here, it takes like 20 games to kind of figure out, is like explore the rotation, explore the lineups, and then figure it out from there. And if you need to make a move, you go from there. And if you need to make an adjustment in terms of the lineup, you go from there. That was going to be my guess too. Like, they're going to give this team like 2 months with Randle on it to sort of figure out where it goes from there. The idea of playing small but with 2 big power forwards, I think that makes some sense if you're going to go that route. But yeah, my guess would be, I know our pal Ian Begley has talked about, the Goga Batadze market and, the potential that he's got something in hand in Orlando, and maybe that doesn't, that would preclude the Knicks from being able to go in that direction. I mean, where they go from here, I don't know. I think it's going to be, obviously, whoever you bring in is not going to, you would not have the same reputation as where Isaiah Hartenstein ended up. It's also worth remembering, though, that 2 years ago, Isaiah Hartenstein could be had for like 2 years, $19 million, and people didn't see this in him either. So I think this front office deserves the benefit of the doubt until proven otherwise. It is a blow. It is a downgrade in terms of that rotation as it stands right now. And it is a frustration, but it is also one born of a calculated gamble. Bringing in Mikal Bridges and having more versatility on the wing and having this be the way that our roster is constructed provides for a higher ceiling for the group. Stylistically, it's going to require change unless you're able to find like a pretty perfect plug and play guy at a significantly lower price point. It's going to be tough to see, but this is the gamble the Knicks have made. And, they struck out on this particular part of it. Remains to be seen if the other parts of it will pay off.
So we're going to be back with Dan, continuing to react to the news that Isaiah Hartenstein is on his way out of New York. And Julius Randle, what role does he ultimately play in bringing the Knicks a championship? And what are sort of the best ways he can tilt his game to help the team? Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch with killer last minute deals. All in prices views from receiving the lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. I actually, in the fall, used it to buy some NBA tickets. I was in Phoenix visiting my girlfriend, and it just so happened the Knicks were going to be in town. I said, hey, let me go to the best ticketing app out there and get some tickets. So why Game Time? Flash deals. You save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. My single favorite part, though, is the lowest price guarantee. That means if you find a lower price on a different site, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So there's literally never an excuse not to use Game Time because it is inevitably, inherently going to be the cheapest ticket you can possibly buy. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Yeah, and it's worth noting. I mean, a shame and really good for iHeart. Shame that they couldn't have made that a longer deal, even if they had given him more money on it. But even if the Knicks hadn't brought in Bridges, like they could have only given him 4 for 72. So I think that should be a consolation for Knicks fans. Like this was going to happen either way. And if you didn't bring in someone like Bridges, you were taking a step back next year. And it is a shame because I think with Hartenstein, my mentality would be a little bit more like, all right, let's just go to war with this group. And I don't know if I don't think they'd be the favorite against the Celtics. I think with Hartenstein, I would still have them over the Sixers just because he was just such a net rating god and did so much for them as a passer, was like so exceptionally good as a rim protector. There were metrics out there that painted him as like a top 5 defender in basketball last year. And like, I don't know, in a full-time role, like if he actually gets to that level of impact. But the beauty of having him and Mitch was that neither of them had to do that. And now you have to figure something else out. I wonder if like Mo Wagner would be a fun pivot, as someone who can like face up, create some on offense, can shoot a little bit. Precious Achiuwa would not be the worst thing in the world.
And thank you for bringing that up because I feel like every conversation I've had, it's my fault. This is a me problem. Sure, I have continually forgotten to bring up the name Precious Achiuwa, like who, when pressed into duty last season, dramatically outperformed, I think, everybody's expectations of what he could provide in terms of what this means, with his free agent status and, what the market would be for him. I think hanging on to him and having him be your 9th man or something like that is not, or a sort of not expecting him to come in and play 25, 30 minutes like you would for Hartenstein, but step into that role. You're losing some size there, but you maybe are gaining a little bit more in terms of switchability. And obviously he was a monster on the offensive glass as well. So could absolutely provide another pathway toward maintaining that aspect of the Knicks identity where our bigs are hammering the glass constantly, creating extra possessions and being able to contribute offensively that way, even if our spacing is not that same sort of 5-out ideal. So yeah, that certainly could be a pretty reliable fallback option if the Knicks are able to make that make the money work in that context.
Yeah, I think it could lead to some really fun bench lineups because I think the best thing he showed last year was he was just super switchable and he was a little bit better doing that in the regular season than the playoffs. But I go back to it was like one of his first games playing. He was just shutting down Tyrese Maxey in a couple of different possessions. Maxey got revenge a few months later, but he was good doing that. He was shockingly good as like a dive big, playing as a center and with the Knicks' newfound ability again to put 4 shooters around him without sacrificing any defense. Like I think there could be some pretty potent bench lineups, and even like Hartenstein would have taken it to another level, or Mitch, if he had been the backup, would have taken it to another level. I still think the Knicks could put out some of the most dominant bench lineups in the league like that. This was a stat that my buddy anyways, XJ referenced on the podcast yesterday, but like the second best lineup in basketball last year behind like those apex Maxey and Embiid units were Brunson, Deuce, DiVincenzo, Hart, and Hartenstein. And the fact that you can still get those 3 middle guys out there together with some bench lineups, I think can supplement for a backup center that, again, doesn't quite give you the ceiling that someone like Hartenstein, as you hear the Hartenstein ambulance going by all in New York.
They're coming for the laid out Knicks fans. Yeah. I mean, listen, I think it is justifiable to look at this and say, if what the Knicks do at center is bring back Mitch and bring back Precious Achiuwa, it is justifiable to look at it and say that is a clear downgrade in terms of the potential ceiling for this team. And if you were looking at it and saying that heading into this morning, the Knicks were eye to eye, neck and neck, whatever, with the Boston Celtics, you probably move them back a little bit. I think, as we discussed earlier, I kind of maybe already had them back a little bit. And so to me, the relevant question is a little more, could this Knicks team, is this Knicks team back in the conversation for the 2 seed again next year? And I think that this group as constructed is still in that mix. And, they're obviously, we talked about Philadelphia's moves. They will be heard from here. The Pacers were a team that was already in, they beat the Knicks in a series and made it to the conference finals. They'll be heard from. The Bucks, year 2 with Giannis and Dame, and obviously there's questions there with Brook Lopez and what happens with him, but Chris Middleton, a healthy version of that when they had their main guys. They were awesome last year. The Knicks still very much remain in that cluster of teams that could be second best in the Eastern Conference, and if things break right, who the hell knows? Maybe even higher than that. I think the ceiling of the team obviously drops without Hartenstein, but I think the general fundamentals of who we thought they would be in the aftermath of the Bridges trade, that remain pretty sound. This is a blow. I don't think it's necessarily a death knell for this team. I think it's going to require some flexibility, some creativity, and some finding value in areas where other people don't see it from a front office that frankly has proven to be pretty damn good at that over the last several seasons. So it is a blow. It is a richly deserved deal for Hartenstein. And now the Knicks move on trying to figure out, can we rely on Mitchell Robinson? To what degree can we rely on Mitchell Robinson to stay healthy over the course of a longer period of time to be that sort of focal point center for us? And then where do we go when he's not on the floor? Big questions for the Knicks to answer as they get into the rest of free agency.
Yeah, I think the thing I want to wrap up on, and you're kind of getting into this right as we found out the Hartenstein move, is just Randle's ability to alter his game and make this work. Because I think, obviously Anunoby was the supercharger, but when he came into the Knicks for whatever that 14-game stretch, like I've said it a couple times, like their net rating that month was as good as any team in basketball. The Celtics matched it in 2 separate months. No other team hit it. It was like plus 15.6 per 100 possessions, right? So they did show that ceiling, and that was obviously even pre-Mikal Bridges. Hartenstein was a big part of that, and Anunoby was a big part of that. I think Randle made it all work because it was sort of outside of like maybe a stretch at the start of the 2022 season, I want to say, like it was the quickest I've ever seen him move off the ball. And to me, that'll be like the key for this starting lineup, not being clunky, because losing DiVincenzo's shooting and that spacing, going from Hartenstein, who was not a shooter, and this was a trend around the league, skilled bigs finding a way with their screening and their timing and their, like, I guess it was passing gravity really for Hartenstein. You had to be up on him in that sense, finding a way to be spacers, even if their shot itself was not a threat. And Hartenstein was so good and so smart and so intuitive about that. And Mitchell Robinson, for all of his strengths, like even beyond the fact that is just not his game, it is not intuitive for him to find a way to get defenses to pay attention to him 20 feet away from the basket. And I think all of that is going to be a real challenge for this team. And I think, to your point, like as has been the case the last few years, I don't think it's going to look perfect right away because of that. And I really do think it's on Randle more than anyone else to make that work, to make sure like Bridges is still getting his shots, to make sure Anunoby is still getting his shots. Because at this point, like fair or not, like it's not a 1A, 1B situation. Jalen Brunson is the number one guy. And Julius Randle like has to find a way to allow that to be while also still playing like an all NBA talent, because just with the talent drain with Hartenstein gone, like they need him to maximize his ability more than ever. And it's like, I'm saying all this, like some people would listen to this and be like, yeah, he just can't be like a selfish prick. And at times he maybe has been that, but I do think it is a complicated thing to do all of that. But I think he's up for it. I don't think IQ has ever been the issue with him. I think it's been willingness to lean into the right parts of his game over and over again. And I'm wondering how long it takes the Knicks, I'll use your term, to find that convergence in this lineup. And if they can, like how this front office could pivot closer midseason and lean into what could potentially make this team great.
Julius Randle being injured for this last playoff run, I think it was one of the biggest what ifs in the NBA for me, because I was not saying like if they had him, they'd have won the title, but like I was really fascinated. I was very curious about what do they look like? What does he look like in this infrastructure in the playoffs? Because he was one of the best sort of 3-point creators in the league. Like when, as you mentioned, leaning into the right parts of his game. It's not pound, 3 spin moves into traffic. It's pound, get downhill, draw, help, kick. And no, outside of Brunson, nobody else on the roster was adept at doing that and making that drive, kick, find the guy in the corner, or demand the double on the post, fling it cross court, create that open slot 3. He has that vision. He has that IQ. He understood that was a part of what he needed to do, especially when Brunson was off the floor. And the Knicks, they were not a world-beating offense in the minutes that Randle played without Jalen Brunson, but they were above water. And that is like that. If you do that, that's a really good starting point toward being able to win multiple series. Like you kill everybody when you've got your stars on the floor, and then you tread water when one of them needs a break. Like there's a lot worse ways to win games than that. So I think he winds up often being like the sin eater for a lot of what Knicks fans like least about the version of the team that existed before Brunson. Brunson gets to be the prince that was promised and the savior moving forward. And Randle is like, yeah, but the game can look ugly, or when the shots aren't going, it's inefficient and it's gross. And yeah, we remember the beginning of last season where he didn't make a shot for like the first week and a half of the season. But then like after that, it's that guy operated like not just an all-star, but like had he stayed healthy, would have had a very good chance for another all-NBA season. And so I think he is a fascinating piece because he's also the one, as you look at it and you look at the salary structure, like if you're moving off of somebody, he's the most likely piece to move from there. And they found an identity and found a certain level of success with him off the floor. Like, I think he's going to get a chance. I think they're going to need to lean into him as the way he can create shots. I think he understands what they need from him. And I think he's open to an adept or willing to play the way that they sort of found. I really believe that. And I think he's going to get the opportunity to prove it. And if the Knicks start off next season looking like this ingredient reintroduced to the mix spoils the whole thing, then obviously you need to make a move and a decision from there. But I think especially the idea of being willing to play smaller more often, but still be able to space the floor to create more opportunities offensively, to find a way to get to good shots without Brunson creating. I think he's going to be a gigantic part of that. And that was true before this morning, and I think it's especially true now. So yeah, like when we get through the offseason and we get into the preseason stuff and start thinking about like who are the most interesting players in the league, like he has been one of those for me for years, and I think maybe even more so now. I would like put him in pen as far as a guy I would consider in that way, because I think there was an opportunity that was sort of taken away from him last year to redeem his reputation in those highest leverage moments. And I think now even more is going to be asked of him in this Knicks construction, unless something dramatic changes by the time that we finish signing off from this show, which could absolutely happen given the way that this show has proceeded so far.
I'm with you. I mean, when he got hurt, we talked about as like obviously just like a basketball tragedy for him, like incredibly frustrating for a team that showed that ceiling, but it was just a loss of intel that you just needed going into the summer. And I think honestly, like one way or another, could have changed like which superstar they went after and how they approached it, because there's no track record of Julius playing well in the postseason, and you can hardly blame him for it. Like one time, like he was on a grossly overmatched team. The other time he's playing on a borderline broken ankle. And then this year he didn't get to show anything. He didn't get to play. And that, like, to your point, like necessitates the Knicks keeping him, I think, into the season, and hopefully it looks good. I think it will. I think they just have to find ways to get him on a really spaced floor, and hopefully they do that. But Dan, I can't thank you enough for all your time. Before I let you go, can you tell everyone where they can find all your great work?
Well, I don't know if I have any great work, but we'll see. You can find the work that I do at Yahoo Sports, sports.yahoo.com. I believe yahoosports.com works. It should. And you can find me on Twitter at your man Devine. Mostly like links to whatever I write. There was an Isaiah Hartenstein pre-write that went up a little while ago. I'm gonna have to find the link to that and share it out. More coverage as free agency goes along. The podcast is called No Cap Room. I do it with our colleague Jake Fisher. Comes out each week. I did a show throughout this regular season called Divine Intervention. There was also a podcast that we put on pause for the postseason. It is coming back, but I do not know when. So follow on social media, and you'll find out the answers to those questions and so many more.
Dan Devine, one of the best in the business. I know it's only been a couple of times, but one of my favorites to have on this podcast, and a New Yorker. So please go support him. Follow him on Twitter at your man Devine, and we will talk to you very, very soon on Locked On Knicks.